Yeah, although I know there's talk of among the players what's going on is there's collusion like in '87 and stuff. But Tim, it seems to me the marketplace is finally behaving rationally. This seems like a team-friendly deal to me. Good for Bryce Harper. He's hitting in a ballpark that's good for him as opposed to Dodger Stadium. But 13 years, he could have made $180 million in 4 years from the Dodgers. And they're going to get him basically for the rest of his life. It seems team-friendly. I'd like to get back to the contract for a second. According to my math, if you turn down 4 years, $180 million, and that contract takes you till you're about 30, and you instead sign a 13-year, $330 million deal, basically what you've said is, I'm going to sign a 9-year deal at the age of 30 that's going to pay me less than $17 million a year, $150 million all in. That's a curious trade-off unless he really is thinking about his legacy and the numbers he could put up in that ballpark. It seems to me that's not just about safety, because you would figure at the age 30 he'd be in line for another contract at least for $150 million. But the other thing it tells me is that I think maybe the Phillies believe that in the new CBA there's a DH coming to the National League. You know, why are you paying him till he's almost 40 and he's not a great defender? It's really his bat. What have you been hearing about that? Is there some kind of idea that the DH is coming to the NL? I mean, I'd rather them get rid of it in the AL than spread it to the NL.
There. I would just say to him that no opt-outs, just because you got to opt out doesn't mean that you got to use it. Like, you could stay there your whole career and get a contract with opt-outs. It's kind of sort of the best of both worlds. But if this is really his outlook, that his belief is, I'm going to tell you guys, I'm going to be here for the rest of my career, and maybe that attracts other people or whatever it is, bless his heart. You ain't the only one, though, that has a say-so into where you spend the rest of your career, though, buddy. And you got another 5 years there before you get to be no trade clause, man. Well, hold on. I don't think that has to do with what baseball is going to be, because we are also going to have forces like inflation. They're going to be getting more money in. True. Like, presumably the money should go up, although we're now just topping the Alex Rodriguez contract of, like, what, 15 years ago in that zone? That being said, I think Bryce Harper was hedging against Bryce Harper. This is not exactly the most consistent statistical performer that we've seen in baseball. There is no guarantee that at age 30, he would be able to command what he is able to get right now. That's what I think the hedge is, not against the larger system, but against himself.
I got to admit, this is one of the rare situations where I consider it a win-win. I personally believe that the Padres were absolute fools to give Manny Machado $300 million over 10 years when you're questioning his effort, not his greatness, as a player, his effort. I have no problem with the money. I got a problem with the long-term deal, investing in him. And you don't have an out, but he has an out after 5 years. In the case of a Bryce Harper, it's rare because I think it's a win-win. If you go to your agent, Scott Boras, and you say, I want to be someplace long-term, I essentially want to go someplace where I can retire there. You have a no-trade clause, so they can't get rid of you, but you don't have you don't get to opt out either. You're not looking to go anywhere. They're not looking for you to go anywhere. The $25.4 million, those numbers, as exorbitant as it may sound, it's still workable because it doesn't inhibit your ability to go after a Mike Trout. You still can keep some of your starters in the mix, a couple of dudes in your rotation in the mix, because you're not triggering those luxury tax dollars according to articles in the Philadelphia newspapers anyway. So I look at it from that perspective, and I'm saying to myself, excuse me, I got this dude in right field. You know, you got the 388 lifetime on base percentage. You got the 512 slugging percentage. I'm looking at it from that perspective, and I'm like, hey, he's young enough. If he produces for 8 years, you're good.
Yeah, the 13 years to me is still the headline, Bo. 13 years at a time when every minute feels like an hour and every day feels like a week. It's just hard to conceptualize, right? It's hard to look ahead and think, what's any of this going to look like? Part of me wonders, actually, Bo. 13 years for Bryce Harper. Is any part of him hedging against the possibility that when he is in his 30s, the free agent market, because of the way baseball is as a sport, will that just look different? Will all the big money be as big? And you do bring up a good point, because in 2017, he has that knee strain running to first base. And since then, look, he was a guy, Bo. There are years when he was with Bonds and Sosa in terms of WAR, in terms of offensively dominant players in the National League. But since that knee thing, It's been bad. Defensively, he's been bad. He hasn't been the same player. Now, I do think that is a thing to recover from, but you mentioned A-Rod and the contract he got. Part of me thinks the Phillies are doing this because they were sub 500 last year, and these teams that want to get back into the race, we've seen this with Cano and the Mariners, we saw it with A-Rod and the Rangers, we've seen it with Machado and the Padres. This is somebody they will break the bank for because they want to make this big splash.
It feels like a loss to me. It feels like a loss for Harper. I wonder what Scott Boras feels about this contract. The Nats offered him $300 million over 10 years. That's $30 million a year, and he had no trouble turning that down. He will now make less money per year on his own team than Jake Arrieta, a pitcher. He will make less money than Albert Pujols, who can no longer run to first base, less than Machado, less than Arenado, less than Otto Porter, and I believe less than Bobby Bonilla is still making from the Mets. I just don't get it. I don't get it because it's a smaller ballpark. I think Hoskins and Harper will each hit at least 40 home runs. I think if he gets off to a bad start, they booed the manager on the first game last year. He very well could be booed. I wonder if this means they'll have enough money down the road from Mike Trout. This is a contract, Mike, that in 5 years will seem eminently tradable. I don't think he goes the full 13.